Dmitri leaned over his workbench, his fingers blackened with grease, the familiar scent of motor oil filling his small garage. The afternoon sun streamed through the dusty window, catching the chrome edges of his motorcycles and glinting off his leather jacket. For most people, this quiet ritual was just another day, tuning engines, checking tires, and letting the hum of machines drown out the chaos of the world. But for Dmitri, it was peace, a rare space where the weight of his life as a Hell's Angel could rest for a moment. Then the phone rang. The shrill sound sliced through the quiet, and he froze. Calls were rare. Most people didn't bother with him unless they wanted trouble, or needed help. He wiped his hands on a rag, glanced at the screen, and frowned. The number was unfamiliar. "Hello," he answered cautiously. "Mr. Ivanov." The voice was calm, professional, but there was a weight in it, an urgency he couldn't ignore. "This is the St. Petersburg General Hospital. You are listed as an emergency contact for a patient here." Dmitri froze, his knuckles tightening on the phone. Emergency contact. The words echoed in his mind, each syllable heavy and strange. I think you have the wrong number," he muttered, trying to keep his voice steady. "No, sir. The patient, Alina Petrov, specifically listed you. We need to reach you about her condition." His stomach dropped. Alina. The name was like a ghost, one he hadn't thought about in years. He remembered her vividly. A young woman, kind-eyed, walking home one rainy evening, struggling to carry groceries. He had noticed her because, in a moment of impulse, he had offered to help. They'd exchanged a few words, she had smiled, and then life had taken its usual turns, he with his dangerous roads and endless rides, and she with her quiet, ordinary life. That had been the last time he saw her, until now. Dmitri sat down heavily on the worn stool by his workbench, the rag slipping from his hands. His mind raced through memories, the ordinary and the extraordinary intertwining. Why would she list him as her emergency contact? What had happened? He could hear the tension in the nurse's voice over the phone, the seriousness, and it unnerved him in a way he hadn't felt in years. I'll be there," he said finally, almost without thinking, the words leaving his lips before he could analyze them. Hanging up, he stared at the motorcycles lined up in his garage, the engines cold and silent, as if even they sensed the sudden shift in his world. Today, he realized, he would leave behind the comfort of his solitude. Today, a stranger's call would pull him into something bigger, something urgent, something human. And somewhere deep in his chest, beneath the leather and the scars, a small flicker of hope stirred, the hope that maybe, just maybe, he could make a difference again. Dmitri paused at the garage door, helmet in hand, staring down the street where the cold wind whipped through the alleys of St. Petersburg. The city moved on around him, people rushing, cars honking, life carrying on as if nothing extraordinary had happened, but he felt suspended in a quiet storm of uncertainty. Alina's name echoed in his mind again, soft but insistent, tugging at memories he had long buried beneath leather jackets and roaring engines. He climbed onto his motorcycle, the familiar hum of the engine beneath him grounding him, yet the anxiety in his chest refused to settle. His mind replayed fragments of his past with her, her grateful smile after he helped carry her groceries, the way she had looked at him with a trust he had never expected, the fleeting connection that life had pulled away like a river carrying driftwood downstream. She had chosen him, as someone to rely on in an emergency. That thought, strange and weighty, pressed on him like a stone in his pocket. Dmitri's hands tightened around the handlebars. Part of him wanted to shrug it off, to stay in the comfort of his garage, to keep the quiet rhythm of grease and engines. But another part, a part he hadn't felt in years, urged him forward. He remembered the long nights riding alone, the hollow emptiness he tried to drown in speed and noise. Maybe this was something different. Maybe showing up could mean more than just surviving, more than just getting by. As he rode through the city streets, memories of his own reckless choices flashed in his mind. Fights, broken promises, roads taken without thinking, and the loneliness that followed. He had lived a life that most would judge, a life that had left scars both seen and unseen. Yet now, in the quiet moments between the roar of the engine and the rush of the wind, he wondered if one small act, simply arriving, could change a life. Could change his life too. Traffic blurred past him, but his thoughts were sharper than ever. He imagined the hospital room, Alina lying there, vulnerable and scared, and he felt a surge of responsibility that went beyond logic. He wasn't her family. He hadn't been involved in her life beyond a fleeting encounter. And yet, she had trusted him. That trust, fragile and human, demanded action. Hours seemed to stretch into minutes as Dmitri navigated winding streets, the city lights reflecting off wet pavement, shadows dancing like ghosts of the past he had tried to forget. The journey was more than physical. It was a mental reckoning, a confrontation with the side of himself that wanted to remain detached and the side that yearned to be present, to connect, to care. By the time he arrived at the hospital, the engine was still warm, but his heart felt colder, anxious with anticipation. He parked, removed his helmet, and took a deep breath, the kind that settles the stomach but not the mind. He had no plan, no words ready, only the determination to do what needed to be done. To show up, and in that moment, Dmitri realized something profound. Kindness wasn't about knowing what to do or having all the answers. Sometimes, it was simply about being there when it mattered most. Dmitri pushed open the heavy hospital doors, the antiseptic scent hitting him like a wave. It was so different from the smells of his garage, the grease, the leather, the faint smoke from engines. Here, everything was clean, bright, and fragile. Nurses hurried past him with clipped greetings, but his focus was fixed on the room number scribbled on the slip of paper in his hand. He stopped in front of the door, his hand hovering over the handle. A surge of doubt washed over him. What if she didn't remember him? What if she was angry or scared? His fingers trembled, unaccustomed to such uncertainty. He took a deep breath, reminding himself that this wasn't about himself. This was about her. When he finally stepped inside, time seemed to slow. Alina lay in the hospital bed, her face pale and framed by strands of dark hair that had escaped the hospital cap. Tubes ran from her arms and chest, machines beeped in steady rhythm, and for a moment, Dmitri felt the weight of the world pressing down on him. She looked so small, so fragile, a stark contrast to the vibrant woman he remembered helping years ago. Her eyes fluttered open, and recognition sparked, hesitant, uncertain, but there. Dmitri felt a lump in his throat. "Dmitri," she whispered, her voice weak but filled with relief. He nodded, swallowing hard. "Yeah, I got your call." She gave a small, shaky smile. I didn't have anyone else. I thought, maybe you'd come." Her words were simple, but they carried a weight that resonated deep in Dmitri's chest. No one had ever trusted him like that before. Not in his world. Not in his life filled with noise, danger, and fleeting connections. He pulled a chair close to her bed and sat down, careful not to disturb the tubes or monitors. For the first time in years, Dmitri felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in a long while, the raw, unguarded need to care for someone else. He reached out, gently holding her hand. The touch was electric, not in a romantic sense, but in the way it reminded him that humans, at their core, needed connection, trust, and compassion. As the minutes passed, he listened to her tell her story, how she had fallen, how she had been alone, and how fear had consumed her in the sterile corridors of the hospital. Dmitri realized that every small act he had ever done, every choice to show kindness without expectation, had somehow led him here. He understood now that life had a way of connecting souls in ways that seemed random, but were really profound. Alina's frailty, her vulnerability, stripped away the world he had built around himself. In her presence, Dmitri's tough exterior softened. He no longer saw himself as the solitary Hell's Angel, the lone rider on dangerous roads. He saw himself as someone capable of making a difference, of being human in the most essential sense. For the first time in a long time, Dmitri felt a quiet resolve settle in his chest. He would not leave her side. He would be there, not out of obligation, not for recognition, but because it was the right thing to do. And in that realization, the room seemed a little brighter, the beeping machines a little less mechanical, and hope, a fragile, powerful hope, began to grow. The next few days passed in a rhythm Dmitri had never experienced before. The roar of his motorcycle was replaced by the soft hum of hospital machines, the smell of antiseptic replacing the familiar scent of grease and leather. Each morning, he arrived at the hospital with a quiet determination, bringing small comforts he knew would make Alina's stay more bearable: a warm blanket, a cup of tea, even a small notebook she had forgotten at home. At first, he had felt awkward in this sterile world. Doctors and nurses eyed him with curiosity, sometimes wariness, as if a Hell's Angel didn't belong in such a place. But Dmitri didn't care about appearances. All that mattered was her, Alina, lying in that hospital bed, scared, alone, and yet trusting him implicitly. He read to her from the books she loved, his voice rough but steady, filling the quiet room with words of adventure, hope, and laughter. She would smile faintly, a spark of her old warmth returning. Dmitri would adjust her pillows, brush back her hair, or hold her hand when the pain became too much to bear. Each small gesture seemed insignificant on its own, but together they built a bridge of care and humanity between them. One evening, as the golden light of sunset spilled through the window, Alina's eyes met his, and she whispered, "You didn't have to do this." Dmitri shrugged, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Yeah, I did. You trusted me. That's enough reason." His voice carried a sincerity that surprised even him. He realized that his life had been full of noise, danger, and fleeting thrills, but nothing had ever mattered as much as being there for someone who needed him. The nurses noticed the change too. The once intimidating biker had transformed into a gentle presence, advocating for her care, ensuring she was comfortable, and speaking up when something seemed wrong. Dmitri's quiet, steadfast presence created a ripple through the hospital. Other patients smiled more, staff relaxed, and the room that had once felt sterile and cold began to radiate warmth. Alina's recovery, though slow, was steady. She would laugh softly at his jokes, ask about his rides, and even scold him for forgetting to eat. In these moments, Dmitri realized the power of consistent, selfless compassion. It wasn't grand gestures or heroic feats that changed lives, it was showing up, day after day, with genuine care and attention. One afternoon, as Alina's color returned and her strength improved, she squeezed his hand, her eyes brimming with gratitude. "You saved me," she said simply. Not just from illness, but from the loneliness that had threatened to overwhelm her. And in that moment, Dmitri understood something he had never fully grasped before. Kindness doesn't just heal others, it transforms the one who gives it, too. As he looked around the room, he felt a profound sense of fulfillment, an unspoken connection between their lives. The act of compassion wasn't just about her recovery, it was about rediscovering his own humanity. For Dmitri, the Hell's Angel with scars both seen and unseen, this small, tender act had become a turning point, a reminder that even in the darkest, most dangerous lives, there is room for light. The morning sun filtered softly through the hospital blinds, casting warm streaks of light across the room. Alina's laughter filled the space, a sound Dmitri hadn't realized he'd been craving, light and melodic, a stark contrast to the steady beeping of machines that had once dominated the room. Today, the machines were quieter, the tubes fewer, and the aura of fear that had clung to the walls lifted, replaced by relief and a fragile sense of hope. Dmitri sat in the chair beside her bed, rubbing the sleep from his eyes, still wearing the leather jacket that had become his second skin. He had spent nearly every day by her side, and though his muscles ached and fatigue tugged at him, he felt more alive than he had in years. There was a strange, peaceful strength in seeing someone rise from vulnerability, and he knew that, in some way, he had risen with her. Alina turned her head toward him, her eyes glistening. I don't know how to thank you," she said softly. "You didn't have to come. You didn't have to stay." Dmitri shrugged, his usual tough exterior giving way to a small, genuine smile. "I did it because it was right. Because someone needed me." He paused, searching her face. "But, you did your part too. You fought. You trusted me. That matters." She squeezed his hand, the gesture speaking volumes. It wasn't just gratitude, it was recognition, acknowledgement of a bond forged in hardship, trust, and human connection. Dmitri realized that the hospital had been more than a place of recovery for her, it had become a place of transformation for both of them. When the doctor came in to give the final clearance, Dmitri felt an unexpected pang of emotion. He had ridden through rain and cold to get here, worried about what he might find, but now he stood at the threshold of something more profound than any danger he had ever faced on the open road. Alina's recovery was complete, and in that moment, the victory was quiet but deeply resonant. As they walked out of the hospital together, the world outside seemed sharper, more vivid. The city, with all its chaos and noise, no longer felt indifferent. It felt alive, full of possibilities and connections waiting to be made. Dmitri glanced at Alina, her smile bright and full of life, and felt a warmth in his chest he hadn't known he was capable of feeling. "You really saved me," she said one last time, her voice carrying both sincerity and wonder. "No," Dmitri corrected softly. "We saved each other. You just needed someone to show up." For the first time in years, Dmitri felt a sense of true peace. He realized that life wasn't about the reputation he carried, the fear people held of him, or the roads he had conquered alone. Life was about the moments when you chose to be human, to care, to connect. Sometimes, the smallest act of courage, simply being there, could change everything. As he climbed back onto his motorcycle and felt the engine's familiar rumble beneath him, Dmitri looked out at the horizon. The world stretched endlessly before him, uncertain yet full of promise. And for the first time, he believed that even someone like him, a Hell's Angel with a dangerous past, could leave a mark of kindness, compassion, and hope on the lives he touched. In that quiet, powerful realization, Dmitri rode into the sunlight, the echo of Alina's laughter in his ears, carrying a lesson that would stay with him forever. True humanity is measured not by who you are, but by the love and courage you show to others.